the Ukrainians will be trying to do, I mean, they'll be to some degree really pleased by what's happening in Russia, and they will, while the Russian command and control is focused elsewhere, they'll try and take advantage of that, and they'll try and build up some momentum that they found hard to do over the last couple of weeks. As you say, John, early reports of a potential crossing around Kherson onto the far bank of the Dnipro River. If that is true, and if they establish a foothold, that is pretty significant. But I think it's very early reports we're hearing at the moment.
Yeah, Major General Rupert Jones, the retired Standing Joint Force Commander. Rupert, hi.
Good evening, John.
Good to have you here, Rupert, because I'd love to hear your thoughts, or if you can recall your thoughts and reflections, from let's say from early Saturday, when most of us really plugged into what was going on in Russia. You'll have seen those reports of this advance on Moscow from the Wagner forces. You'll have seen those estimates of maybe 25,000 troops involved. What did you think as a former experienced commander? Did you think, what are they doing? I mean, they can't possibly conquer Moscow and depose the regime in the Kremlin with a force that size.
Well, I mean, I think all of those things, John. I mean, it was extraordinary early hours, wasn't it, when we started to hear these reports, trying to discern what was and was not going on, and claims of force of 25,000, which of course likely hugely overinflated. But as you rather allude to, the idea that you could march on Moscow with discuss how many troops you did have. I've heard another figure say 5,000. I mean, you simply can't march on Moscow with those numbers. And Prigozhin has claimed, very boldly that, had the Russian forces attacked into Ukraine with the professionalism that he marched on Moscow, they would have taken Kyiv. But of course, nobody is really stopping them as they just drove up the roads towards Moscow.
Yes, yes. And look, when you look at what happened in the context of the war in Ukraine, it is fair to say that lots of uncertainty now about the future of the regime in Moscow, of Putin. It is all to the good for Ukraine, is it not? That whatever is in this, almost whatever is good, for Ukraine, it stems from what's bad for Russia.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's in any of our interest for there to be a really destabilizing, call it revolution, coup in Russia. They're a nuclear armed state. So, I think that would make us all very nervous. But there's no doubt that what happened over the weekend has weakened Putin. To what degree, only time will tell. He's a great survivor, but Putin weakened, definitely. Shoigu, the defense minister, yet further weakened, but of course he's been under great pressure for a long period of time. But what it's also done is it appears to have taken the Wagner group, who've been one of the most effective forces in Ukraine, arguably the most effective, out of the fight. They came out of the line after largely taking Bakhmut to rest, but we assumed they'd go back to the front line in due course. This has taken them out of the fight with a pretty uncertain future as to what they will do now in the Ukraine campaign in the round.
Do you get any sense of what it means on the battlefield now? There are reports, aren't there, that Ukraine forces have crossed the Dnipro River, established a bridgehead. Does this seem very significant to you?
Well, I mean, yes, what the Ukrainians will be trying to do. I mean, they'll be to some degree really pleased by what's happening in Russia, and they will, while the Russian command and control is focused elsewhere, they'll try and take advantage of that, and they'll try and build up some momentum that they found hard to do over the last couple of weeks. As you say, John, early reports of a potential crossing around Kherson onto the far bank of the Dnipro River. If that is true, and if they establish a foothold, that is pretty significant. But I think it's very early reports we're hearing at the moment.
Yes.
The Ukrainians are making headway. It's slow, it's painful. President Zelensky's said it's taken longer than they would hope, of course. But I think we should all stick with them, stick with keep patient as it were. My sense is that they're continuing just to test the Ukrainian defenses, try and find a way through, test tactics as well. What does and doesn't work against this defensive line? These Ukrainians, like all of us, have never come up against a defensive position as mature as the Russians have got. So they're learning as they go.
All right, Rupert, really good to have you with us as always. That's Major General Rupert Jones there.